Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the dark, flickering world of medieval nights, where your ancestors didn't drift into a single, solid 8-hour slumber. They did something much stranger, and somehow it made perfect sense. Before we go further, you probably think you know how sleep should work. You collapse, blackout for 8 hours, wake up, grab coffee, doom scroll, repeat. But centuries ago, your great dash whatever was splitting that same night into 2 acts, first sleep and second sleep, like a slow theater play under candlelight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to subscribe, because if you don't, tomorrow's story will simply vanish from your feed. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a muddy lane of the 1300s, carrying a tallow candle that drips more than it shines. Every window glows weak amber. You peek inside a cottage, a family already snoring in their first sleep before midnight. You think, that's early, even for peasants. But here's the twist. They'll wake up again around 1 or 2 a.m., not because of nightmares or bladder emergencies, but because that's what the body expects. Modern myth says continuous sleep is the mark of a healthy mind. Break the cycle, and you're doomed to insomnia, right? Well, medieval folks would have laughed quietly so as not to wake the chickens. To them, splitting the night was completely natural. If you weren't doing it, you were the weird one. Joke number 1, you'd basically be that guy insisting on one long nap during a banquet. Wake me up after dessert. Back then, the night wasn't something to conquer with lamps. It was a living creature. Firelight, moonlight, the church bell tolls everything shaped when people lay down and when they rose again. The sun dropped early, darkness stretched 12, even 14 hours, so people slipped into first sleep shortly after sunset, woke naturally around midnight for an hour or two, then returned to second sleep until dawn. That waking window wasn't restlessness. It was opportunity. A hush blanketed the villages. Dogs barked far away. Ovens still glowed. Families whispered prayers, checked on livestock, even made love. It was an intimate pause, halfway between dream and duty. Joke number 2, basically. The medieval version of checking your phone at 2 a.m. only. Their notifications were the rooster and the rat in the corner. Historical diaries, letters, and even Chaucer's lines mention first sleep and second sleep. It's not fantasy, it's documented habit across Europe. In some French towns, bakers timed dough rising between the sleeps. The yeast literally dreamt along with them. Historians still argue whether this pattern was purely seasonal, a winter adaptation, or truly year-round. Some suggest urban candlelight gradually stretched waking hours, slowly erasing the split. Joke number 3. So yes, you can blame capitalism and candles for your insomnia. Inside one hut, a woman named Elsbeth sits up after first sleep. She stirs the ashes, warms goat's milk, and whispers a psalm. For her, this silence is sacred, the only time the house truly belongs to her. Remember this hush, the midnight calm. You'll feel it echo through every myth we uncover tonight. Because in the next section, when that candle burns lower and the church bell tolls 12, you'll learn that waking at midnight wasn't a sign of anxiety. It was the most peaceful hour of the entire Middle Ages, The air is thick with wood smoke and the faint temps of tallow. Outside, the fields are already dark. The sun has slipped away hours earlier than you expect. No one complains. Night arrives like an old friend who always overstays his welcome. The villagers finish their stew, mutter a prayer, and climb into beds built more from straw than comfort. The fire sighs, the door bar is dropped, and the first sleep begins. You'd think they were exhausted from endless labor, and yes-dilling, milking, and hauling water all day could break a horse's spirit. But there's another reason for this early surrender: the sheer length of the darkness itself. In midwinter night could stretch to 14 hours. You can't keep a candle burning that long unless you're a duke with a wax budget. So ordinary folk simply surrendered to nature's rhythm. First sleep was less a choice than a truce. Inside one cottage, you watch a boy curl beside his grandmother. She hums something between a lullaby and a sermon. The dog curls at her feet. The boy's eyes close before the last verse ends, because sleep in this world doesn't sneak up on you, it surrounds you. Even nobles weren't immune. The castle's great hall goes silent after supper. Torches hiss. Servants snuff them out one by one. Somewhere, a knight mutters about polishing his armor but never moves. Within minutes, he's snoring in his tunic. If he dreamt of dragons, he wouldn't tell anyone dragons are poor company for breakfast. You can almost feel your own body easing into that rhythm: warmth, darkness, the faint heartbeat of the house. In modern life, you fight its creans, caffeine, playlists, but in the 14th century, the darkness wins every time. It tugs you down the moment your head meets the coarse linen pillow. Historians later noticed that first sleep wasn't shallow. It was heavy, dream-laden, and strangely therapeutic. People woke from it refreshed, as if they'd completed one small lifetime already. Some doctors of the age even advised that the first sleep was when the body digests the spirits. A phrase no physician can explain, but every tired peasant believed. The second sleep, they said, was for the soul. You could almost call it a medieval double feature. First, body repair. Later, spiritual maintenance. Of course, not everyone appreciated the schedule. A few chronic complainers, there are always a few claimed first sleep came too soon, that they lost valuable drinking time at the tavern. You can picture one of them slurring, "Why sleep twice when I can forget once?" before collapsing face first into his ale. Yet, for most, that early descent was the only luxury they owned. The world grew quiet, the mind slowed, and somewhere in the dark, the first dream of the night unfolded. It might be of harvests, or lost lovers, or perhaps nothing at all, just a blur of warmth and breathing bodies. Centuries later, scientists experimenting with total darkness found that people left without artificial light begin, after a few days, to adopt the same two-sleep cycle. Their bodies fall into it naturally, as if some ancient clock still ticks behind the ribcage. Modern life didn't invent insomnia, it merely silenced that clock. In one London chronicle, a merchant records lighting his final candle at 7 of the clock, then lying down till the first waking. The way he writes it, you sense no novelty, no comment, just routine, like brushing your teeth. Everyone knew the script. When darkness commanded, you obey. There's a comfort in that obedience, strange as it sounds. You weren't competing with the sun, the clock, or your inbox. You were a creature among other creatures, ruled by the same invisible tide. Maybe that's what modern people miss most, not just rest, but surrender. And as the first sleep deepens, so does the mystery. Because soon, right, when the fire turns to ash and the stars reach their coldest high-tool wake again, not by alarm, not by noise, but by instinct. And what you'll do in that hour between sleeps will reveal more about medieval hearts than any daytime history ever could. If you're still awake, subscribe now so you don't miss tomorrow's secret. The next chapter begins the moment the bell tolls 12. The fire has shrunk to a faint red eye in the hearth. Outside, frost slicks the thatch and the air hums with silence. Then, almost as if choreographed, the cottage begins to stir. A cough here, a creak there. A door latch clicks open. You blink, confused. It's midnight. Why are they waking? No one panics, no one yawns. They rise the way you stretch between dreams, natural, unhurried. The first sleep is done. For you, in the 21st century, this moment would be called a problem. You'd label it insomnia, reach for your phone, doom scroll, and curse your restless brain. But here, in the 14th century, this is the calmest hour of the day. Waking in the middle of the night isn't failure, it's custom. A man reaches for flint and steel, coaxing a small flame from the coals. The glow catches his wife's face. She smiles, without surprise. He steps outside to check the animals, boots crunching frost. Another neighbor sits at the edge of her bed, whispering a prayer. The village hums in low, shared consciousness, as if the whole world is breathing in sync. Historians later gave this pause a name, the watch. For 1 or 2 hours, people moved quietly through the dark, talking, praying, reading by candle, sometimes even visiting a neighbor. Love letters were written, bread was baked, and, occasionally, arguments were settled in hushed voices so as not to wake the children. In one record from 1500s France, a farmer notes he spoke with the Lord between sleeps. Scholars took that literally. He meant prayer, but you can hear the poetry behind it. The silence felt divine. In that borderland between dreams, people believed heaven leaned a little closer. And yet, it wasn't all piety. Let's be honest, half the time they used the watch for more human activities. Couples tangled under blankets, lovers slipped through back doors, and a few thieves took the opportunity to test just how quietly boots could land on frozen mud. Some priests even warned their flock against temptations of the watch. You can imagine the sermons. Sin creeps most swiftly at the hour between sleeps. One English ballad hints at lovers whispering by the moon's soft lamp. Translation: no one was sleeping, and the moon got an eyeful. But there was beauty in this semi-waking state. People described a clarity that daylight couldn't offer. Dreams still clung to their minds, half-formed and strange. Thoughts drifted without hurry. It was reflection without distraction, mindfulness before the word existed. A historian once wrote that this hour was when the medieval mind met its own shadow and didn't flinch. In a monastery not far away, a bell rings. The monks rise, too, not out of habit but obligation. Matins, the midnight prayers, begin. They chant in Latin, voices low and steady, echoing off cold stone walls. Down in the village, faint vibrations of that sound reach even the common folk. a ghostly reminder that their sleeplessness is sanctified. Meanwhile, our friend Elsbeth, the peasant woman you met earlier, sits by her embers. Her husband snores softly behind her. She stirs a pot of steeping herbs, sipping something warm. Maybe she thinks of her daughter married off in another town. Maybe she just enjoys the silence. For the first time all day, no one needs her. In this fragile darkness, she finally belongs to herself. There's humor in how modern science circles back to old truths. When researchers deprived volunteers of artificial light, the same pattern reappeared. 4 hours deep sleep, 2 hours awake, 4 hours again. Left alone with darkness, the body remembers. So maybe insomnia isn't always broken sleep. Maybe it's memory, ancient rhythm, tapping on the glass, asking to be let back in. If you woke at midnight back then, no one called you sick. You were part of the night's design. And maybe, if you've ever stared at your ceiling at 3 a.m., you were closer to them than you think. Outside, the rooster stirs early. The stars tilt toward morning. The villagers settle again, slow and drowsy, into their second descent. But before they vanish into dreams, one thought lingers in the quiet. This hour isn't to be feared, it's to be felt. And as you drift with them, you'll soon discover what that second sleep truly meant, how it became the forgotten art of rest. The house glows with the last pulse of the fire. Outside, the moon sits perfectly still, white and distant, as if holding its breath. This is the hour no one writes about, the soft space between sleeps, when the world feels paused. You'd think nothing happens, but this is when life becomes whisper-sized and strangely honest. The baker across the lane kneels by his oven, checking the dough he mixed before dusk. The yeast rises quietly, puffing like a secret. Next door, a midwife wakes to the knock of a desperate husband. Babies don't wait for sunrise. In one corner cottage, 2 lovers meet in silence, their breath fogging the air. Everything feels suspended, sacred, and a little dangerous. The church bell won't ring again until matins, but you can almost feel its phantom echo, time itself stretching thin. For the poor, this was the only hour that truly belonged to them. No lord to serve, no tools to lift, no field to plow. Just a sliver of ownership carved out of darkness. A young boy turns over in bed, awake but pretending not to be. His mother murmurs a prayer for the souls in purgatory, her voice blending with the wind. Somewhere beyond the village, a fox screams a sound so human that people swear it's witches calling. The boy tightens the blanket. Even fear feels different at this hour. It's soft, almost companionable. You can imagine how many stories were born in this watchful silence. Ghost tales, saintly visions, love confessions, whispered through shutters. The hour between sleeps became the laboratory of imagination. When you wake at 2 a.m. today and your brain starts weaving wild thoughts, you're not broken, you're medieval. It's easy to romanticize it, but there's practical beauty too. People tended fires, comforted children, checked animals, mended clothes, even chatted across thin wooden walls. Whole communities gently breathing in sync. They didn't call it multitasking. They called it life continuing in the dark. Elsbeth again, she sits by the embers, dipping a quill into a pot of homemade ink. The parchment is rough, but her handwriting is steady. She's writing a letter to her sister in another village. The candlelight catches the wrinkles on her hands. She pauses to warm her fingers, smiles faintly, then keeps writing. I woke, as always, when the stars are kind. You can almost smell the room wood smoke wool, a hint of damp earth. If you close your eyes, you can hear your own breath sinking with hers. There's something deeply human in that half-wakefulness, the ability to think, feel, and still be half lost in dream. When dawn finally comes, she tucked the letter into her apron, stoked the fire again, and slipped back into bed beside her husband. By sunrise, it will feel like none of it happened. But for a brief hour, she lived to livest the dreaming one and the secret waking one. Modern scientists might call it the REM interruption, but that's too sterile. The medievals had it better. They simply called it the watch. A pause in the middle of the night when the veil between worlds felt thin. If you ever wake in the small hours, maybe don't reach for your phone. Just breathe, listen, and remember that for centuries, that stillness was sacred. Because the next part of this story isn't about sleep at all, it's about how the church and its bells took ownership of your dreams. The night, once wild and unmeasured, begins to tick. The sound isn't mechanical, yet no gears, no pendulum, but a rhythm born from faith. Bells toll across the valley, not to wake or warn, but to divide time, the way the church divides souls. You feel it tremble in the cold air, the slow echo rolling over thatched roofs. For centuries, time belonged to nature. Sunrise, sunset, hunger, weather. Then came the monks. They turned the flow of night into a schedule. Matins, lauds, prime-hours, dedicated to prayer and discipline. What began as devotion soon became domination. The bell told peasants when to pray, when to sleep, when to rise. It even told them what to dream about. In a monastery on a hill, robed figures shuffle through torchlight, heads bowed. Their chant vibrates like bees inside a hollow tree. You listen from the village below. Their words drift through the fog, strange and comforting. The monks have no candles to spare for beauty, yet the sound is beautiful anyway. You'd think the common folk ignored it, but they didn't. The rhythm seeped into their bones. The bells marked the end of first sleep, the moment to wake, to pray, to whisper thanks. Even people who couldn't read the scriptures could hear holiness. The night became a map, carved by bells instead of stars. Somewhere, a farmer mutters. Half asleep, they ring for God, but they wake the cows. His wife laughs softly. She knows those bells are both a blessing and a leash. Each toll reminds them they are seen, counted, timed. Still, the comfort was real. The bell gave the dark a heartbeat. Without it, the night felt endless. With it, they knew they weren't alone. Imagine lying in pitch black, the air heavy, your breath loud, then hearing that low metallic hum rolling from the abbey miles away. It's the sound of order in a world that could collapse at any second. The church's clock not the mechanical kind yet, but its ritual precision was the first to tame the chaos of night. Every prayer became a hand of the clock, every soul a gear, and slowly even peasants began to think of time as something measurable, not mystical. But as centuries passed, someone decided to build a machine that could mimic those bells. The first clocks arrived, crude and loud. They didn't toll for prayer. They tolled for profit. Merchants loved them. Monks despised them. And the people, well, they just learned to wake on command. Elsbeth hears one such clock in the nearby town for the first time. She frowns, stirring her pot. Too soon, she whispers. It isn't dawn yet, but the bell tells her to move. The night loses a little of its mystery. She doesn't know it, but the industrial age is whispering through that bell's metal throat. You, centuries later, still live by its echo arms, deadlines, reminders. The church handed time to the city, and the city sold it to your calendar app. The irony. The sound that once guided prayer now breaks your sleep. The bell tolls once more, fading into mist. The villagers settle back, surrendering to second sleep. But as you listen, you can almost feel the clock waiting in the dark, sharpening its teeth for the centuries to come. And when you wake next, we'll talk about how your body is yours, still remembers those bells, still aches for the rhythm they stole. You wake again in the quiet, not because of noise, but because your body says it's time. The same way it told every ancestor before you. Long before alarms, long before caffeine, the human body had its own gentle metronome and instinct, carved by thousands of nights under firelight. You're not broken when you wake in the middle of the night. You're ancient. The villagers didn't have sleep scientists, circadian rhythm charts, or blue light warnings. They had darkness and instinct, and somehow that was enough. The human brain, unbothered by neon or schedules, naturally divides rest into two chapters. Deep sleep first, then a lighter, dream-rich second act, the watch in between. That's when memory and thought stir. Your ancestors used it to talk to God or to themselves. You use it to scroll reels. Evolution sighs. Modern labs, centuries later, rediscovered this truth by accident. When subjects lived in constant darkness, their bodies fell into the same pattern. For hours, asleep, to awake, for more, asleep. Like clockwork. The researchers were stunned. The body, left alone, still remembered the medieval night. No sermons, no bells, just biology singing an old song. Inside the cottage, Elsbeth stretches her arms, not fully awake, but not dreaming either. She moves slowly, the way you'd rise from a deep pool. Her body knows what to do. She pokes the fire, sips the last of her milk, and returns to bed with a faint sigh. There's no urgency, no shame, no I can't sleep frustration, just rhythm. The body leads, the mind follows. You can almost hear her breaths sinking with the house, the way the thatch crackles, the embers breathe, the wind hums against the shutters. Everything moves together, pulsing at the same pace. The night feels alive, like one long inhale. It's strange to think modern life calls this fragmented sleep a condition to cure. Doctors write prescriptions to silence instincts the body evolved to trust. But when Elsbeth lay down again, she wasn't fighting sleep. She was meeting it halfway. Your own biology still holds that pattern, buried under centuries of artificial light and productivity slogans. The pineal gland, tiny and ancient, releases melatonin in two gentle waves, not one. Your ancestors didn't know the term, but they felt it. The first wave pulled them down, the second swept them into morning. We've mistaken interruption for malfunction. A scholar once joked that humanity's worst mistake was inventing the light bulb, and maybe he wasn't wrong. You can picture Edison proudly flipping his switch while 10,000 circadian rhythms screamed in protest. Even animals around you, from songbirds to sheep, still mirror that two-phase rest. They nap, wake, move, and sleep again. Nature thrives on intermission. Humanity, somehow, decided the play should run straight through. Maybe that's why modern exhaustion feels heavier. It's not just lack of sleep, it's lack of the right kind of sleep. The kind with a pause, a breath, a watchful moment in between. Elsbeth lies back under the blanket. The fire pops. She smiles faintly, almost knowingly, as if she could see through centuries to you lying in your bed, glowing phone in hand. If she could speak, she'd probably whisper, "Put it down. Sleep like we did, twice, if you must." And she'd be right. Because the secret isn't gone, it's just forgotten under the noise of clocks and screens. Your body is still waiting for darkness to teach it again. As the last coals fade, the village sighs into silence. The second sleep begins, deeper and slower than the first. But even now, a question lingers. If our bodies still remember to sleeps, what happened to the peace that came between them? You'll find out soon, when we open the next secret, how medieval medicine once prescribed that very rhythm you've lost. The next morning, light creeps through cracks in the shutters, landing on faces already half awake. It looks peaceful, but centuries later, physicians will call it inefficient. Medieval doctors, though, had no such prejudice. They saw the rhythm of two sleeps as part of the body's design, a harmony of humors and moonlight. You weren't sick for waking at midnight. You were balanced. If you leafed through their medical texts, dense Latin, bits of Greek, ink faded to brown, you'd find prescriptions that sound almost poetic. Asterisk rest once to settle the flesh, again to settle the mind. The first sleep was when digestion and the blood did their quiet work. The second, when thought returned and dreams took their place. It wasn't superstition, it was their best science. In Paris, around 1450, a physician named Laurent Joubert wrote that awaking after first sleep purges melancholy, meaning, if you were sad or anxious, an hour's wakefulness between slumbers would clear it. No therapy, no pills, just the moon and a few calm breaths. You can almost see him nodding wisely while everyone else today panics over melatonin gummies. Medicine back then revolved around rhythm, eating with the sun, sleeping with the dark, bleeding when the moon was right. Ridiculous, maybe, but their world moved to patterns we've bulldozed over. You can laugh at their leeches, yet your smartwatch still begs you to breathe. Different tools, same desperation. In one monastery infirmary, a healer records a remedy for sleeplessness: warm goat's milk, time, a prayer whispered thrice, then rest till the bell betwixt sleeps. Translation: fall asleep, wake with the monks, and let faith handle the rest. For all our science, no prescription today sounds that gentle. Even stranger, their physicians understood what modern chronobiology confirms. The body runs in cycles shorter than a day. Heart rate, temperature, hormones all pulse and dip like the sea. Break the pattern and illness follows. They didn't have words like circadian rhythm, but they lived it. Elsbeth knows none of this. She only knows her bones feel lighter when she wakes between sleeps, and her mind clearer after the second. She trusts the feeling, not the data. Her neighbor's daughter, coughing through the night, is told by the village healer to rise when the stars lean west, drink water warmed, then return to bed. She does, and by morning, the cough is gone. Was it placebo? Probably. But faith is a strong sedative. You can almost admire their simplicity. Listen to your body, obey the dark, and you'll heal. No one needed to quantify sleep cycles with graphs. They just lived them. By the 16th century, however, the tone starts to change. Doctors in bustling cities begin complaining about lazy peasants sleeping twice. Efficiency is creeping in, and with it, judgment. The idea of rest becomes something to defend, not enjoy. Still, the old books linger on shelves, gathering dust. Their pages smell of smoke and herbs. Inside, the handwriting tilts toward poetry. One line, barely legible, reads, "*The second sleep restores the dreamer's courage.'" You close the imaginary cover and wonder how many centuries it's been since medicine last prescribed courage. If you listen closely tonight, maybe you'll hear it again, that quiet whisper between sleeps. The ancient doctor in your blood murmuring, "You're built for this." But soon, the world will forget that kindness. Because, just as the healers wrote their last poetic cures, another force was waking factories, clocks, and profit. And those machines would turn sleep itself into something to measure, sell, and steal. The world outside is silent again, but inside every cottage, something begins to move, a shimmer behind closed eyes, a flicker of light beneath the lids. Dreams, the medieval kind, are not the fractured chaos of modern stress. They're whole stories, vivid and strange, like parables told by the unconscious. And in this divided night, they come twice. The first round of dreams, after dusk, is heavy and physical: harvests, meals, warmth, the things of the body. The second, after the watch, is lighter, cleaner, full of spirits and symbols. People didn't just dream differently, they used those dreams. The gap between sleeps became a kind of intermission where they could think about what they'd just seen. Imagine waking from a nightmare, talking it through with your wife by firelight, then slipping back under the blanket to see how the story ends. In villages across England and France, people kept dream books, little collections of meanings. If you dreamed of running water, a birth was coming. If of falling teeth, a death. They believed dreams between sleeps were truer because the body had rested and the soul wandered freely. Some even rose from bed to write them down before they vanished. One night, Elsbeth wakes from the first sleep with tears on her cheeks. She tells her husband she saw their lost child walking beside a stream of stars. He doesn't scoff. He simply nods and says, "Then he is safe." No doctor, no priest, just acceptance. The dream becomes comfort. Monks treated dreams with suspicion. Too many saints had visions that disrupted the hierarchy, but even they couldn't resist interpreting them. Some claimed God spoke through those midnight awakenings, while others warned the devil preferred that hour. Scholars still argue whether faith or fear shaped the medieval dreamscape more. Maybe both. There's poetry in how practical they were about it. People would shift positions to invite better dreams, your left side for visions, on your right for rest. If nightmares came, they'd hang iron keys or sprigs of rue near the bed. Anything to keep the night kind. And yet, beneath all the superstition, they understood something profound. The mind needs a place to wander. That gap between sleeps was not wasted time. It was the workshop of imagination. In the pause, they rehearsed ideas, solved problems, replayed memories. The peasants who could barely read still carried whole worlds in their heads. Modern researchers, staring at EEG graphs, call this memory consolidation. They think they discovered it. But every medieval dreamer knew the truth centuries earlier. Thinking in your sleep is how you survive waking life. If you've ever woken from a vivid dream, sat up, and then fallen back into a sequelius, that strange continuation, you've just practiced the oldest art of all. Your brain still remembers the two-act play of the medieval night. Outside, the wind stirs the trees. Inside, Elsbeth sighs, slips into her second sleep, and somewhere in that half-conscious drift, she finishes her dream. The child by the starry stream turns, smiles, and disappears into dawn. You may think dreams are random flickers of memory. To them, they were visitations, lessons from another world, squeezed between two halves of sleep. And as the sun climbs the horizon, a quiet truth lingers. Every dream is a message, but only the patient ones, those who wake, listen, and return, ever get to read the ending. Next, you'll see how even those sacred nights weren't free from the pull of desire, how, in the dim candlelight, love itself learned to live between sleeps. The hour between sleeps isn't all prayers and quiet thought. In the small stone cottages, under thin quilts and flickering candles, another rhythm hums, one older than bells or clocks. Desire has its own calendar, and the body keeps it faithfully. Midnight, that velvet pause, was when many people reached for warmth that had nothing to do with fire. The medieval church wrote long treatises about the dangers of flesh, but it also knew what everyone was up to. One confessor in Norwich complained that couples wake after the first rest to make mischief in the dark. His complaint was really just proof. The practice was so normal, it needed scolding. Imagine it. The first, sleep heavy with work and supper. The second, reserved for dreams. And this in-between space, the watch given to intimacy. Candles burned low, blankets pulled tight, breath misting in the chill air. Children and servants asleep nearby, yet the world outside, too silent to care. The night itself seemed to encourage closeness. Elsbeth shifts under her blanket, her husband beside her, stirring at the faint crackle of the fire. There are no words, no planning, just a half-awake instinct shared through centuries. For them, affection isn't hurried or secrets folded naturally into the structure of the night. Love has its scheduled hour, the same way prayer does. The irony is delicious. The same monks who warned against sinning at midnight also invented the timetable that made it possible. When matins bells rang in the abbey, villagers below took it as permission for their own devotions of a different kind. The sound covered them like a hymn. You can almost hear the jokes traded at the market the next morning, men boasting about hearing the bell twice, women smiling knowingly. Medieval humor was earthier than ours. They laughed at the things we hide behind euphemism. The night between sleeps was not shameful, it was practical, even tender. There were darker edges, of course. Some used the hour for secrecy of another kind, clandestine meetings, affairs, the trysts of servants and nobles, letters written by candlelight, promises whispered through windows. In court records, you find strange entries. A husband returned too early from first rest. History never changes as much as we pretend. But mostly, it was simple connection in a cold world. When your days are filled with toil and obedience, you claim the one piece of night that belongs entirely to you. Love becomes rebellion, warmth becomes prayer. Scientists today will tell you that body temperature dips at midnight, then rises again around 3. They call it hormonal fluctuation. The medievals just called it the right time to reach for someone. And maybe they had the better explanation. If you wake in the dark and roll toward a sleeping body, you're not just seeking comfort, you're reenacting an old tradition, something written into blood long before clocks rewrote it. The same pulse that guided them still hums under your skin. Elsbeth drifts back to sleep with her husband's hand resting lightly on hers. The candle sputters out, leaving the room in soft darkness. Outside, frost glints on the window, catching a shard of moonlight. The world is perfectly still again. Tomorrow, when dawn breaks, no one will speak of this hour. It belongs to the night, to the shared hush between dreams. But history remembers it quietly, the way you might remember a half-forgotten embrace. And as the embers fade, we move on from love's warmth to something colder. Harder the way class and labor divided, even the rhythm of sleep itself. The same moonlight that glows tenderly on Elsbeth's cottage slides across the hill to a stone manor where silence means something else. The nobleman sleeps under embroidered canopies, wrapped in linen smoother than anything a peasant could afford. His dreams smell faintly of beeswax and wine. But even here, the night is split. When the first sleep breaks, he stirs, calls for his servant to bring a cup of warm ale, spiced with cloves, and listens to the winter wind moan through the tapestries. Down below, in the barns and byres, other figures are awake for very different reasons. The peasant rises at midnight, not from luxury but necessity. Fires need feeding, animals need tending, snow needs sweeping from the threshold. The hour between sleeps might be peaceful for some, but for the poor, it's unpaid labor with frostbitten fingers. You can picture the village from above, a scattering of lights in the dark, like embers breathing. One window flickers where a servant mends clothes by a stub of candle. Another where an old man coughs and feeds the fire. The rich and the poor share the same moon, but not the same kind of rest. In a grand hall, miles away, a baron sits wrapped in a fur robe, reading a psalter by lamplight. He's waiting for the second sleep, perhaps thinking about the next day's hunt. His servants, meanwhile, are awake in the kitchens, scraping pots in icy water. They won't return to bed until his candle is snuffed. Their first sleep has been shortened, their second will be stolen. That's how class looked in the dark, comfort measured not by wealth, but by how many uninterrupted hours you could claim. A merchant's wife might boast of her long second sleep, while a miller joked he hadn't had one in 10 years. No one needed a chart to see who ruled the night. Yet there were small defiances. A farmhand might steal a minute at the doorway to watch the stars. A maid, finished with chores, might sit by the dying fire and hum softly, pretending she's still awake by choice. In that moment, she reclaims something the world denies her. The watch becomes freedom again. Modern historians sometimes call the medieval night egalitarian because everyone shared the same darkness. That's romantic nonsense. Darkness is democratic only if you can afford to rest in it. For most, the night was as stratified as the die, only quieter about it. Still, there was a strange intimacy between classes during these hours. the noble's candlelight and the peasant's hearth smoke. The bell that called monks to prayer also marked the baker's rising dough. Different labors, same rhythm. The night made neighbors of them all. Elsbeth, half awake, hears the faint clang of the Lord's distant forge. It's a soothing sound, oddly enough. She thinks of the warmth that metal must hold, then rolls over, wrapping the blanket tighter. The forge bellows. The wind answers. Both are lullabies in their own way. If you stand outside the village now, you can almost see the pattern. Lights winking, fires dying, new ones flaring. Humanity breathing in waves. It's not equality, but it is connection. The hum of countless lives synchronized by the same invisible clock. When dawn comes, no one will remember the midnight division of work and rest, only the fatigue that clings like smoke. But before the sun rises, one final transformation waits. The birth of industry, the machine that will make even sleep obey. The centuries roll forward like grinding gears. The soft rhythm of candles and bells gives way to a new sound, metal. Wheels turning, steam hissing, hammer on steel. The dawn of industry doesn't just change work, it rewrites the human night. At first, the shift is subtle. Merchants in the growing cities install mechanical clocks above their shops. The bells no longer toll for prayer, but for opening hours. The sun isn't the boss anymore. The schedule is. When the whistle blows at 6, the workers rise, no matter how long or short the night. And that's how the second sleep begins to die. In London, factories belch smoke that blots out the stars. Gas lamps burn through the dark, a false dawn stretching until morning. Families crowd into tenements where light leaks through every crack. Who can tell when to rest, when night never really arrives? The body, confused and weary, gives up its ancient rhythm. 4 hours, maybe 5, all at once, that's all the factory allows. Elsbeth's descendants trade her straw bed for a cot near the mill. The woman who once stirred milk by candlelight now feeds a machine through the night shift. Her sleep, when it comes, is shallow and anxious, filled with clanging echoes of the gears she can't escape. No dream hour, no peaceful watch, just collapse. Doctors begin to notice the toll. In the 1800s, they write about modern nervousness, industrial fatigue, the urban insomnia. They think it's disease, but it's grief for the lost second sleep. What was once rest becomes productivity. What was once rhythm becomes efficiency. A few old souls resist. Rural families, far from the smoke, still rise at midnight to stoke fires and whisper prayers. But even there, railroads bring timetables, schools teach punctuality, and sermons praise the industrious sleeper. Early to bed, early to rise is sold as virtue, not adaptation. It's the first slogan of the sleep economy. You can almost hear the smug satisfaction of progress humming in the background. Asterisk, we've conquered the night, but the victory is hollow. Cities glow all night long, yet people are more exhausted than ever. The watch, the sacred intermission that once let thoughts and dreams breathe, is gone, replaced by a single block of restless, pressured unconsciousness. Elsbeth's great-granddaughter writes in her diary in 1889, "I lie down and close my eyes, and I do not drift, fall." The word fall is perfect. There's no grace in it, no choice. Sleep has become a pit you tumble into because you must. The 2 acts of the night are now one long crash. Machines keep perfect time, but they make imperfect people. A whistle becomes the new church bell, but no one prays to it. The clock rules the world, and the body, still loyal to its old rhythm, quietly suffers. You might think you've escaped all that your soft bed and smart lamp have restored peace. But every time you wake at 3 a.m. and scold yourself for it, you're still under the same spell. The industrial night never really ended. It just changed its wallpaper. Somewhere inside you, the second sleep waits like an extinct animal pacing behind glass. And maybe, if the noise ever stops, it might come back. But first, we have to listen to science. The one thing that, centuries later, rediscovered what Elsbeth already knew. 300 years after the mills stole the night, scientists finally begin to wonder. Why are we so tired? In the mid-1990s, a researcher named Thomas Ware darkens a laboratory room, takes away every clock, every lamp, every trace of artificial day. Volunteers live there for weeks, guided only by candles. Within days, the miracle happens. Each subject begins to sleep twice. 4 hours, wake. 4 hours again. The medieval pattern resurrected under fluorescent supervision. The papers call it biphasic sleep. The public calls it weird. But the data don't lie. Left in darkness, the human brain releases melatonin in 2 waves, as if a buried conductor lifts his baton twice each night. Our genes still hum to the rhythm of the 12th century. Modern medicine, embarrassed, tries to rename its segmental rest polyphasic adaptation. The jargon can't hide the truth. The peasants were right. When the lights go off and the clocks go silent, the body remembers its script. You can picture the lab, volunteers wrapped in blankets on thin cots, the hum of the air vent replacing the village wind. After their first sleep, they wake calm, not anxious. Some read, some sit in the dark, some just think. One subject later says it felt like prayer without religion. The scientist nods, scribbles asterisk, subject exhibits tranquility. If only he could see Elsbeth smiling across the centuries. Neurologists note another surprise. During the watch, the brain floods with prolactin, a hormone tied to peace and nurturing, not excitement, not stress contentment. Evolution had built a chemical lullaby between the 2 sleeps, a moment designed for reflection. Industrial life amputated it. Technology now tries to sell it back. Apps promise sleep cycles restored. Lamps mimic sunset. Headphones play fake rain. We recreate with gadgets what a single candle once knew how to do. It's almost funny if it weren't so sad. You sit there, listening, and maybe you realize that every complaint of the modern age, anxiety, burnout, endless scrolling, could be a side effect of forgetting how to rest in chapters. The night was supposed to have an intermission. We cut it out for efficiency, and the mind never healed. Elsbeth's ghost could teach the scientists everything they're charting in graphs. She'd tell them that when the fire dimmed, you waited, not worried. You watched the shadows dance and let your thoughts wander until the second wave of sleep carried you back. No shame, no diagnosis, just trust. The data confirm her wisdom. Heart rate lowers twice. Memory consolidates twice. Dreams sharpen in the second act. The lab lights come back on. The volunteers return to one long, restless block of modern sleep, and the experiment ends. The report concludes dryly. Human rest patterns are naturally segmented in the absence of artificial light. Translation: the dark ages were right. The bright age is exhausted. You glance at your clock glowing on the bedside table. 2:43 a.m. You think of Elsbeth stirring her ashes centuries ago. Maybe you smile. Maybe you don't reach for your phone this time. You let the silence stretch, the hormones settle, the second wave build. Science has caught up, but your body never left. And just as your eyelids grow heavy again, remember this: in the war between progress and peace, darkness has always been the wiser side. Soon, we'll see how the myth of early to rise finished the job, turning natural rhythm into moral duty. The story turns brighter to bright. Gaslight spreads, then electricity. Cities glitter through the night, proud of their endless glow. Somewhere in that radiance, the old myth is born. 8 unbroken hours means virtue. Broken sleep means failure. The phrase early to bed, early to rise spreads like a sermon printed on factory schedules. It isn't health advice, it's propaganda. You can almost hear the echo of self-help centuries early. Pamphlets preach that successful men wake before dawn, that sleep is laziness dressed in blankets. The second sleep becomes suspicious, even sinful. Monks once measured holiness by prayer. Industrialists measure it by punctuality. Doctors join the chorus. In Victorian journals, they call interrupted sleep neurasthenia, weakness of will. Women are told to train their bodies to match the clock. Workers are told to be grateful for shorter nights. Nobody asks the body what it prefers. Elsbeth's line of descendants now sleeps in rows of identical flats. The hum of machines never stops. The glow of lamps seeps through curtains. When one wakes at midnight, she thinks something's wrong. She lies there, ashamed of being awake, fighting her own biology as if it were a moral flaw. The punishment for disobedient sleep is anxiety. Modern culture doubles down. The alarm clock becomes an emblem of discipline. Coffee, a badge of pride. The second sleep once, a quiet gift, is buried under hustle quotes and productivity memes. We rename exhaustion as ambition and call it progress. Even language betrays us. Sleepless means troubled, but sleepless drive means admirable. The world forgets that rest is part of rhythm, not its enemy. And yet, the body keeps protesting. Every sleepless parent rocking a child at 2 a.m. Every writer staring at the ceiling. Every lover whispering in the dark. They're all participants in a rebellion older than reason. Without knowing it, they practice the lost habit of the watch. If Elsbeth could walk through your apartment tonight, she'd laugh softly at the glowing screens. "You've brought the sun indoors," she'd say, "but you never let it set." She'd open your window, let the air cool the room, and tell you to listen for silence again. Because the myth of the single perfect sleep is just that, a story told by those who profited from your fatigue. The truth is quieter and older. You were made for ebb and flow, for first and second, for pause and renewal. When the lights dim at last, you might feel the body's memory stir, the faint pull toward the watch, the invitation to think, pray, or simply be. You're not lazy, you're human. You're answering a call that never really stopped ringing. Outside, dawn gathers behind the rooftops. The clock insists it's time to rise, but your heartbeat whispers otherwise. The night's lesson lingers, Productivity ends where peace begins. Next, we'll return to that forgotten calm, the emotional hour that once healed the mind between sleeps. Before the modern world taught us to rush through dreams, the second sleep wasn't only rest, it was reflection. That quiet gulf between darkness and dawn was where people repaired the invisible parts of themselves. No therapist, no journal, just the slow pulse of night letting thoughts settle like dust in a still room. Elsbeth would wake from the first sleep, not anxious but curious. She'd sit upright, the blanket around her shoulders, eyes half closed. For a few minutes she'd do nothing at all. The silence felt alive, pressing gently against her skin. In that space, memories softened, worries lost their sharp edges. She didn't call it meditation, but that's what it was. Historians find letters and diaries filled with lines written at that hour, half poems, half prayers. One farmer wrote that he spoke to his dead wife when the world is quiet and God's ear is near. Another confessed that he kept his temper through the day because he let the dark forgive me first. The night was therapy before therapy existed. Even the body seemed to help. During the watch, heart rate slowed, breathing deepened, hormones balanced. Modern labs show the same pattern. The mind drifts into a lucid calm, halfway between waking and dream, where creativity and memory bloom. It's the moment when painters see images and thinkers find answers they never searched for. The medievals didn't analyze it, they simply trusted the feeling. Elsbeth's son once caught her murmuring to herself during the watch. "Are you talking to someone?" he asked. "To everyone," she said, "but only tonight they can hear." The boy laughed, but years later, when grief found him, he woke at midnight and understood. In cities today, that hour still exists, buried under neon and traffic. Sometimes you stumble into it by accident, wake suddenly, stare into the dark, feel oddly clear. You think it's sleeplessness, but it's inheritance, the soul asking for its lost meeting with silence. The emotional strength born from that interval was no small thing. People faced plagues, wars, famine, yet somehow held their sanity. Maybe because each night gave them a rehearsal for peace. They practiced stillness daily. They learned to listen before reacting, to rest before rising. That small habit kept civilizations from collapsing under their own chaos. You can almost see how different the world would be if we'd kept it. Less shouting, more listening. Less noise disguised as productivity, more quiet disguised as wisdom. A whole age trained itself to pause, and we, rushing through endless brightness, forgot how. Elsbeth finishes her nightly thoughts, folds her hands, and lies back down. Outside, frost silvercoats. Her mind is lighter now. The next dream will come easily. She doesn't know it, but that calm she feels is the ancestor of every modern word for mindfulness. Only hers costs nothing. And so the lost hour fades, carrying its secret gift, the ability to heal without doing anything at all. As she drifts toward the second sleep, she smiles faintly, knowing the darkness has done its work. One more truth remains: the rhythm she follows, the one you've just rediscovered, might not be lost forever. In the final chapter, we'll return to it, to the possibility that the old pattern could still save us from the bright, endless day we've built. Morning comes too quickly now. Sunlight, sharp white, impatient, presses against your curtains. Alarms buzz, notifications blink, the world demands movement. But somewhere under the noise, your body whispers an older language. It still knows the shape of the night, the breathing pause between dreams. It still waits for permission to rest twice. Every time you wake in the middle of the night and scold yourself, you're arguing with your own history. You tell your ancient self to adapt, to push through, to be efficient. Yet if you stopped fighting, if you simply listened to the quiet, you'd feel what Elsbeth felt, the calm that comes when you and the dark are friends again. Imagine trying it once. No phone, no clock, no guilt. Fall asleep early, wake naturally, sit in the hush. Let your thoughts drift like smoke above the embers. Maybe you'd write, or pray, or stare at nothing. Maybe you'd just breathe. You'd discover that silence still has texture, that stillness can hum like a song you forgot the words to. The rhythm is waiting everywhere. In villages that still lose power during storms. In cabins where the night stretches long. In your own sleepless hours, if you let them be what they are, instead of trying to fix them. The world's machines may never allow it completely again. But you can borrow fragments, small rebellions of rest inside the bright tyranny of day. Some people already are. They call it segmented rest or intentional wakefulness. But it's really the same old dance. First sleep, watch. Second sleep. Couples whisper at 2 a.m. without shame. Writers keep notebooks by the bed. The internet calls them history would call them normal. Elsbeth would smile at that. She'd see that even in skyscrapers and cities that never go dark, a few souls still remember the pattern. They're the ones who don't fear waking, they use it. They're the ones who hear the echo of bells long gone and answer with a deep, quiet breath. The night hasn't forgotten you. It's patient. It waits behind your screens and streetlights, behind the hum of the fridge and the glow of the router. It's still offering the same invitation. Rest, wake, wonder, rest again. The rhythm that shaped our ancestors hasn't died. It's only waiting for darkness deep enough to call it back. So when you find yourself staring at the ceiling tonight, don't curse the wakefulness. Welcome it. You're not broken, you're remembering. You're part of a story older than industry, older than electricity, older than worry itself. You are, for a few quiet minutes, medieval again. Outside, dawn finally lifts. The fields of centuries past dissolve into your room. The second sleep ends, but the peace remains. Sleep well. You've survived another era. Now breathe. Let the last echo of the story fade into the hum of your own room. The world beyond your walls can wait a little longer. You've walked through centuries tonight, through firelight and frost, through prayer and passion and silence. You've felt the weight of bells and the pull of dreams. Close your eyes. Picture the candle on Elsbeth's table, its flame bending, soft and gold. Hear the slow crackle of her fire, the faint creak of the rafters. Every sound says the same thing. Asterisk, you are safe in the dark. Let your thoughts scatter like ashes, gentle and harmless. Feel your breath lengthen the way her breath once did. The night has carried you through its old routine, and now it gives you back to rest. No alarms, no guilt, no need to fix anything. If your mind wanders, let it. If you drift, don't chase it. There's nothing left to learn, nothing left to remember. just the quiet rhythm that has waited 1,000 years to find you again. Sleep well, traveler. You've returned the favor the past gave you. The story is done. The dark will take care of the rest.